May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Before I was ordained, the bishop made us all go on a retreat for about 4 days at the monastery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And during our conversations, during our retreat, the refrain that sort of kept coming up over and over and over with my colleagues was one of not feeling really worthy to be ordained. That we felt called to this ministry, but couldn't figure out why we had been called, couldn't figure out what was essentially going to happen in our lives, and felt completely unworthy to have been called to priests in the church. And late one night, I was sitting in my room, and the rooms at the monastery are only about 8 by 10, so if you're, a nervous pacing person, you don't have far to go before you have to turn around and head back the other way. And I really felt that I needed to go down and sit in the chapel. And only the candles were burning down in the chapel. And I went down there to sit and to pray for a while. And I was reflecting on the fact that I was going to be ordained in a few days. And I had this overwhelming sense of everything that I had ever done wrong in my life flashed through my head. All the things that I had said that were mean or unpleasant or nasty. Times that I had clearly not been my best self. And following that, there was the most astonishing sense of forgiveness that just started at the top of my head and just went down through my body. And a voice, there was no cloud, but the voice said, "You are forgiven, and you are loved, and you are worthy." And I never wanted to leave the chapel. I was ready to spend the rest of my life sitting there because something really important had happened. For me, I would say it's one of my spiritual mountaintops. And I really would have stayed there if I thought they would have let me. The problem, of course, is, there's no food, there's no shower, there's no nothing. Except for the beautiful chapel. And that's how Peter felt in this morning's gospel lesson. We hear the Transfiguration story every single year on this last Sunday of Epiphany, and it changes a little bit depending on which gospel writer we're reading from. But in every single one of those lessons, Peter, who is, I think, of all the apostles, the one most human, the one most likely to stick his foot in his mouth, the one most likely to get in trouble with Jesus. Peter says, "I've got this great idea. Let's build 3 booths right here." And what he's essentially saying is, look, this awesome thing happened. We better stay here. We need to stay right here because great things happened here. We'll build booths. But on that mountaintop, there was no food. There was no water. They weren't going to last for very long. But what Peter was trying to do was to hold on to that sense of wonder. To hold on to that sense of God's pervasiveness in his life. To hold on to something tangible. Something that he felt like he could really understand about God. And in my imagining of this story, I sort of see Jesus going, "Oh, come on, Peter, just, come on." Because we can't stay on the mountaintop. We want to hold on to it. And we struggle to hold on to it. I struggled to hold on to mine. For days, I was sort of on this spiritual high that I just wanted to keep. But I couldn't keep it. Because I had to do laundry, and go grocery shopping, and go back to work. And if I was in Boston, I'd be shoveling snow. We want to hold on to those experiences because they're profound and they're wonderful and they teach us. But we can't stay there. For Jesus, this mountaintop experience was really the top before we were going to head into the descent. We hear in the gospel lesson that Elijah and Moses were talking about Jesus' departure. They were talking about his death and the crucifixion. So for Jesus, this mountaintop experience was not going to last very long before his passion and death in Jerusalem. But the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, how do we take these mountaintop experiences? How do we take things that happen that are profound and carry them forward into our lives? How do we allow them to change us? Because I suspect that if we went around and were really willing to share with one another, we'd find that a lot of us had mountaintop experiences. They might not be a spiritual experience. It might have been an athletic experience. It might have been an academic experience. We all have those times in our lives when we feel like we have hit the top and we want to hang on to it so tightly. But if we hold on to those, we're just stuck. We can't go forward. And we end up left right where we are. So I think the message for our gospel lesson this morning is we need those mountaintop experiences to teach us and inform us, to remind us of the power of God in our life. But then what do we do with them? How do we take them forward? How do we make our life different because of them? How do we serve God better? I don't have the answers. I have some of my own answers. But I think they're good questions to talk about, especially as we begin to move into the season of Lent, this time when we pay particular attention to our spiritual lives, this time when we perhaps seek to make some changes, to walk farther on our spiritual journey, to take those mountaintop experiences and make them real experiences. So how are you going to make Lent real for you this year? Are you going to give something up? Are you going to take something on? Are you going to allow God to lead you in a new place? I hope we'll spend a little bit of time thinking about it between now and Ash Wednesday when Lent begins. How are you going to let yourself be changed by this time of Lent, by this time of growing nearer to God? Perhaps you'll have your own mountaintop experiences this Lent. Amen.